Hello, welcome to the Mystery Review Crew podcast. I'm Lauren Carr, and today we are interviewing C.s Mcdonald. She is the author of the Fiona Quinn Mysteries and the Owl's Nest Mysteries. Today we're going to be discussing her new release, Matrimony, Mayhem, and Murder. If this is your first time visiting with us, then do be sure to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so that you'll get notifications for any of our upcoming author interviews or podcasts. So, without any further delay, let's get started and start our interview with C.s Mcdonald. For 26 years, C.s Mcdonald's life whirled around a song and a dance. Classically trained at Pittsburgh Ballet Theater School, the Pittsburgh Dance Alloy, and many others, she became a professional dancer and choreographer. During that time, she choreographed many musicals and an opera for the Pittsburgh Savoyards. In 2011, Cindy retired from her dance career to write. Under her real name, Cindy Mcdonald, she writes murder-suspense and romantic-suspense novels. In 2014, she added the pen name C.s Mcdonald to write children's books for her grandchildren. In 2016, Mysteries to that expansion. She decided to write the Cozy Mysteries series that everyone, including teens and tweens, can read and enjoy. Presently, the Fiona Quinn Mysteries 9 books with a 10th slated for 2021. The books are also available on audio, narrated by Maren Swenson Waxenberg. Cindy's newest venture is the Owl's Nest Mysteries. Once again, she has set her cozy mystery in Pittsburgh. The female protagonist, Alexa Owl, is much different from Fiona Quinn. The Owl's Nest Mysteries has a little grit, a little time travel, a little romance, and a whole lot of cozy. Ms. Mcdonald resides on her thoroughbred farm known as Fly By Night Stables near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with her husband Bill and her poorly behaved Cocker Spaniel, Allister. You are C.s Mcdonald. Do you mind if people call you Cindy?
Just call me Cindy. That's my name.
Cindy, and you are starting on tour with Irie Book Tours on January 10th with Matrimony, Mayhem, and Murder, and that is your latest Fiona Quinn mystery. Oh, that's
right. There it is.
There it is.
The back with Fiona all dressed up like a little bride.
Oh.
Yeah, I like the little logo on the back that my cover person does for me. My cover designer does. You always see a Fiona on the back, and she always dresses her appropriate to the story. So it's pretty nice. I like it.
Oh, well, tell us without any spoilers.
Right.
Tell us about the plot for Matrimony, Mayhem, and Murder. And which number book is this?
This was number 10 installment of the Fiona Quinn Mysteries. And I am considering this a pivotal book in the series. I wrote this in such a manner that give the book, the series, shall we say, a little bit of a boost, to change it around a little bit. You know, that I think when you write series, things can get a little dull for the reader. I try very hard not to do that, but hey, it's, the same characters and whatnot. I think my plots are much different each time. I wanted to give it a little bit of a facelift, if you will. For the last 10 books, well, that's not true, 9 books, Fiona has not met Nathan's mother, and he mentions his mother all the time in all the books. She's mentioned, my mother says this, my mother did that. And Fiona says, well, when am I going to meet your mother? And he always says, oh, do you want to meet her? Well, yeah, I want to meet her. Okay, well, when she gets back from Austria or Canada or China or wherever Rita Landry is. So she's never had an opportunity to meet Rita Landry. And
she doesn't live there in Pittsburgh, right? All your books take place around Pittsburgh.
They all take place.
She doesn't live there. Yeah.
No, she doesn't live there. And the big question is, does this woman really exist? Why, we never can meet her. She's never around. Does this woman really exist? Well, now Fiona and Nathan are getting married. Now, the thing about Nathan and Fiona getting married in book 10 in Matrimony, Mayhem, and Murder is the fact that they are already married. They get married in book number 8, Bon Voyage to Murder. And that's when they go on the big cruise, Caribbean cruise. And of course, there's a murder. And during the course of the cruise, Nathan just decides it's time. And they get married on the cruise line. And they decide not to tell anybody that they've gotten married because she knows her mother will want to put on a big wedding, and she knows her father will want to walk her down the aisle. So in book 9, Take Notes to Murder, they're married, they're living together on Oxford Street, but the parents are none the wiser. So now in book 10, they're putting on the big event. And of course, with it being Fiona and it's not going to go as smooth as most people's weddings go.
And that's one of the things that people love about Fiona is things just don't.
Nothing ever just goes as they should. The poor girl, she's just always caught up in something. And
but she's not a ditz. But she's not a ditz. That's what I love.
No, Fiona is absolutely not a ditz in any way, shape, or form. It's just that things that happen around her, she gets caught up in them, and it just and it's always a murder, of course, but they're murder mystery. And in this particular instance, poor Fiona is mere days away from her wedding. They're expecting Rita Landry to come into town. And poor Fiona has to go and meet Rita Landry at the airport all by herself, which she is not happy about. But Nathan's working a big case, and he says, look, I just can't go. And so she's not happy about having to go by herself, but she does. And of course, when she meets Rita is this just beautiful older woman who is extremely well dressed and very well spoken, of course, well traveled.
Yes.
And as they leave the airport, they are being followed by two, mysterious men. And then we go on with parents coming to town, Fiona's parents, Nancy and Garrett Quinn, who of course live in Daytona, Florida.
Yes.
And they're all having a big dinner together, and Chad shows up with his girlfriend, who happens to also be Fiona's wedding planner, and her name is Kirsten. I think it's Kirsten Young, I believe. And well, don't you know, poor Kirsten Young ends up being murdered in the whole story. And so the story revolves around the wedding planner being murdered, and we find out certain things during that time, and these two mysterious men are chasing down Rita, and she's forced to flee the country, and guess who gets dragged along? Poor Fiona. Poor Fiona gets dragged along to England, and because Rita's wearing this absolutely gorgeous necklace that belongs to the Queen, so they have to return this necklace to the Queen. So and these two mysterious men are trying to get the necklace as well. So, like I said, she's drugged to England. And not only does the mystery become who killed the wedding planner, but can they get the necklace back to the Queen and get back to the United States in time for the big day? So
time for the big day.
That's the mayhem. And of course, we meet characters along the way. I think are pretty funny. They're, we always have a good time.
You always have a good time. Now she had, because starting with your first book with her was Murder on Point, and you didn't mention Fiona is a kindergarten teacher. She's not a great, she's not a police detective. She's
Nope.
not a,
She's not even an amateur sleuth. She's just a kindergarten teacher. And every time something happens, she gets dragged by her hair into these murder mysteries. And now that was going steady and engaged, and of course now married to Detective Nathan Landry, who in fact is a homicide detective, she's really drug into them far more than even before. So yeah, she's just a kindergarten teacher, and a lot of times I will feature what goes on in her kindergarten class, which is always an ordeal. You know, poor Fiona always says things to her mother like, teaching kindergarten during the Christmas holidays is like storming the beaches at Normandy. At one point she said to her, teaching kindergarten at the end of the school year is a lot like Custer's Last Stand, you know. So that's how she describes it. And a lot of times when I take you into her kindergarten class, you know, indeed it's kind of like that.
But you know, she's a sweet character, and as a matter of fact, your first books that you wrote before you started the Fiona Quinn Mysteries, you've also written romantic suspense, and you know, where they're a little bit more gritty than this. Why don't you tell readers how you came about writing a cozy mystery?
Well, I was writing murder suspense and romantic suspense, and the romantic suspense books that I was writing was called the First Four series, which was a military black ops suspense series, romantic suspense with operatives, you know, and they were always, you know, handsome and whatnot. And those books were pretty hard hitting, and there was adult content in them. They were not erotica books. I don't write erotica, but they did have some adult content. And you know, people loved those books. I loved them. And I only wrote 5. When I was writing children's books for my grandchildren, I wrote the George the Pony books for my grandchildren because they were just little. And one day my granddaughter, Kirsten, came to me, and she was about, I don't know, 8 or 9. And she said, they call me Bebop. She said, Bebop, I really like George, but I'm a little too old for George. So when am I going to be able to read one of those books? And she pointed to a First Force book. Just happened to be sitting on my
abs on the cover, and
with, you know, Stuart Reardon on the front. He's all, you know, 22 pack or whatever they are. I mean, he, you know, and his shirt's open, and I'm like, ooh, I don't think you're going to be able to read that till maybe 32, when you're 32. and then I thought to myself, what a dumb answer. You know, I've been writing for years. Surely I can write something that literally anybody can read, starting with a 10-year-old. So if you remember, you and I are personal friends. We're good friends.
Yeah.
And you know, you kept saying to me, Cindy, you ought to write a mystery. You ought to write a mystery. And I'm thinking, oh, I can do this. I can't do it, Lauren. I can't do it. So I decided, okay, I'm going to give this a whirl. I'm going to write one of these cozy mysteries. And I said to you, do you remember? No one's going to buy it. No one's going to like it.
And you also said, if this book sells, I'm going to blow my brains out.
No one's going to even look at this book. Well,
the goal was to be really sweet. That's something that your preteen can read.
Right. Yeah. And I wanted the book to be something that a 110-year-old person can read. You know, there's no sex, there's no bad language, there's a good solid story to it. And I decided to base Fiona on a friend of mine. Her name's Debbie. And when Debbie gets in a bad situation, she gets verbal diarrhea. you know, and she just talks and talks and talks and talks and talks, and you're just kind of like, okay, you know, you're talking and you can't shut up. You really need, you know. And this is who Fiona is. You know, the worse the situation gets, the more the verbal diarrhea becomes. And the book took off, Murder on Point, and we had a wonderful cover for that book, just a fabulous cover on that book, and people just loved it, and it just boom, 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 sold. And I thought, well, okay, I'll try a second one. So that's when I wrote Merry Murder. It was a Christmas one. Again, really wonderful cover. The book sold like crazy. You know what? That book even sells in the summertime. Merry Murder. It sells all year long. And I just kept going. And here I am. Book 10.
Do you ever miss writing the romantic suspense? Do you ever miss that?
Sometimes I do, but you know, they were really complicated to write because
I remember it'd take you a year to write one of those.
It would take me a long time to write those because they were very, very complicated, and you know, and the edginess of them. Sometimes I would just have to slam my laptop closed and walk away because it became too edgy. And I just needed, you know, they would be in such a bad situation, and I think, oh, how am I going to get them out of this? And I just leave them there. I'd slam them closed.
I remember you and I had a conversation once where I was right and I wouldn't, and you said you should just walk away from, you know, and she said, and you even said, I let my characters bleed out for weeks before I come back and say.
He's been bleeding for 2 days now. Boy, I hope he makes it. Yeah. Yeah, you know.
I can't walk away in the middle of a scene. I have to finish the scene. Even if you know, my husband's walking around grabbing his stomach, I'm hungry. I gotta finish this scene.
Yeah, no, sometimes I would just get myself, my characters, not me, in a position that I thought, oh my God, how am I gonna get them out of this? What am I gonna do? And the only thing I could think of was just walk away. Just walk away. It's not real. It's not real.
And you would have to tell me that, you know, Lauren, they're not real people.
They're not real people. It's okay. That's
it's
right.
Okay to leave them in the middle of a shootout and go cook dinner for your husband.
They're just, you know, they're just sitting down. Wait a minute, we're done. You can have a cigarette now. Yeah. I will wait for them to come back.
Got another series too. You got another cozy
series, the Owl's Nest series. I decided I wanted to try a little cozy mystery time travel. And while those books are a little bit more complicated to write, I'm really enjoying those ones too. Now, those books aren't as popular as Fiona. And I think it's because there's only 2 of them right now. I think as time goes on and I add books to that series, it will become more popular. And as a matter of fact, I'm writing book number 3 right now because I always I publish a book in November, which that's when this came out, and then I publish a book in May or June. I don't worry whether it's May or June, and that's when I publish a second book. It used to be that I do 2 Fionas a year. Well, now I'm doing 1 Fiona and 1 Owl's Nest. I swore to you, if you remember. Once this book came out in November, I was done. I was on a writing hiatus until January. I wasn't even going, and now I'm
How many words? You're like 20,000 words in now.
I'm up to 20. I've been on 20. Yes, and I mean, I started that book probably a week after this one came live on Amazon, and I'm like on chapter 4, almost through chapter 4, 20,000 words later, and I'm only supposed to have started today. So that's how.
So you got to jump on it. You got to jump on it, so we can look for that in May.
That May or June, May or June, just depending on how it goes for me. I'll be doing a cover reveal, you know, on Facebook, on my Facebook pages, and on my newsletter next month. I'll do a cover reveal, and that book That's an Owl's Nest book. It's book number 3, and it is called Double Dog Bear.
Because
Yeah.
okay, so tell readers a little bit about the Owl's Nest Mysteries, because and then this character is different.
This character is so different from Fiona.
Fiona. Mhm.
And the Owl's Nest are just a little bit more gritty. There's still no sexual content, of course, because it is a cozy.
And no swearing, no
There's no swearing.
People like that. People like that. Yeah.
Right. And people, especially when they pick up a cozy, that's what they're expecting.
Yeah.
They're expecting that they can read that cozy and go to a 12-year-old and say, hey, you want to read this? And hand it off without worry. And with my books, I can do that.
Mhm.
The Owl's Nest does have a little bit more grit to it. The situations are a little bit, tougher than the ones.
And the character is more savvy because, like Fiona, Fiona's in like her mid to late 20s, right?
Right. When we started out, the book she was like 27. And she was kind of a naive. I mean, she's a kindergarten teacher, she was kind of a naive.
But she could teach 4th grade.
That's right. That's what she keeps saying. Right. She keeps saying, you know what? Y'all think that just because I'm a kindergarten teacher, I can't do anything wrong or make a mistake. You know what? I could be a 4th grade teacher. I am qualified to be a 4th grade teacher. And of course, everybody says, oh, brother, But no, our character Alexa Owl is, when the book started, she's 34 and coming out of a divorce. Right. So she's a little bit more worldly. She's and she's moving from Columbus, Ohio, back to Pittsburgh. And she lives in a different area of Pittsburgh than Fiona does. Fiona lives in the Westwood neighborhoods of Pittsburgh, where Alexa Owl lives in the strip district of Pittsburgh, which is a marketplace district. There are no strip clubs in the strip district. It's just a big long strip, and that's why they call it the strip district. And that's where she lives, and she has a couturier shop, and she is a seamstress. It's high end, of course, and she lives in an old building that they bought and they completely refurbished into the Owl's Nest couturier shop. And it used to be the Lazy Hound pub way back in the 30s and 40s. And she lives in the upstairs of this place in this luxury penthouse apartment. And it used to be 3 itty bitty apartments with 1 communal bathroom back in the day when it was the Lazy Hound pub. And the woman whose parents owned the Lazy Hound pub, her name is Winona Mullaney, an Irish woman. She, in the very first book we meet her, she comes to the couturier shop because she's been watching it be completely redone, and she and Alexa hit it off so well. Excuse me. She becomes the manager of the shop. And she speaks with very heavy Irish lilt, and she always is raising a glass and doing a toast and giving everybody Irish wisdom. And the reviewers and the readers love Winnie. They all mention her in the books. They love her. They said she's such a fun character, and I have a good time when I write Winnie. She's a good time. She's a good time.
And because of the time travel, then Alexa ends up meeting her when she was a child.
And she bumps into her, right? Because all the time travel, pretty much, the Lazy Hound pub is kind of like a hub, if you will, where they end up all the time. And it's Detective Bobby Starr that drags her through the time tunnel because he needs help. He's trying to get into the St. Pete's Guardian Angel squad, and he has to clear 3 murders he left behind when he was alive. And so he comes to Alexa for help, and Alexa's like, I don't know anything about solving murders. I don't know any, I'm not a sleuth. I'm a seamstress. But she ends up being very, very resourceful.
And now, what was the challenges that you ran into in writing between this and the Fiona Quinn because of the time travel? What challenges did you have in writing the Owl's Nest Mysteries compared to Fiona?
Well, the Fiona Quinn's the only challenges is making sure that everything lines up. You know, when you're writing a mystery, you've got to make sure there's no holes. You've got to make sure that you've covered all the bases, that sort of thing. I think anybody who writes a mystery, you know, has those challenges.
Yeah.
But I think that when you're writing time travel, it's hard because you have to make sure, especially when the characters are in the time period you're sending them to, and you don't want them bumping into themselves. So that becomes a problem. You have to make sure that you are using lingo, if you will, is from that time period. Example, I had Bobby Starr make a comment about another character that if she had an opportunity to do something, she'd do it in a New York minute. Well, when it went to the editor said, hold the phone. That saying wasn't part of the 1950s. That saying didn't come along until, I think she said, like 1969, 1972, something like that. And I used it, and she said, get rid of it, get rid of it. So you have to be careful of that sort of thing when you're writing time travel. You can't use words they didn't use. But
that can be fun because sometimes because you've actually had Alexa use a word or a term that today we know, but our characters back then don't know.
They're completely confused by what she's saying. And
you had a lot of fun with the first one, Back to the Burg and Beyond, where because she knew where she had met some characters and she was using phrases and things from movies.
Right. Right. She was, you know, she realized that she could use famous quotes from movies that hadn't even been filmed yet. You know, and she was using things from you know, 007, you know, I like my martinis shaken, not stirred, and things like that you know, the characters had never heard before. And because the first one takes place in 1953, so she was using a lot of, and I had fun with it in the second book, Maxed Out, with Godfather, because Maxed Out takes place, I think, in 1958 or something like that.
Yeah.
57. It takes place in 57. Yeah. Well, you know, The Godfather hadn't even been thought of by then. And, you know, we did a whole thing on The Godfather and how much fun we had with The Godfather, you know. So
now, what are you going to do in this third book with?
This third one is Double Dog Dare. And I'm using Sonny and Cher. You know, there's even a chapter called "I Got You, Babe." So, you know,
and it's taking place before Sonny and Cher.
It does take place before Sonny and Cher. This one takes place. Sonny and Cher doesn't become popular until 1965 is what I looked up, is that when they started into popularity. This book takes place in 1963 and 64. And I cover it by her saying to him, how do you know all this about Sonny and Cher? They didn't even come around until 1965. And he makes the comment, oh, you know, I see Sonny every Tuesday night at karaoke. You know? And she's just absolutely amazed that there would be karaoke in heaven, you know.
Yeah.
He says, what else have we got to do, you know? So, and he says he always finds some pretty angel with long dark hair to play the part of Cher, you know. So, he says he knows all about their songs. So, you know,
So you have some fun with that.
You have to have fun with it because you want to entertain the reader. And each one you want it to be different, completely different than the last one. And of course, Bobby Starr has been married 5 times.
Okay.
And remember, he has 3 of his wives were named Catherine, just like Henry VIII. He had 3 wives named Catherine, and Bobby Starr had 3 wives named Catherine. And he keeps saying, I'm nothing like Henry VIII. I didn't behead my wives, you know. So, but we have a lot of fun with all the Catherine.
Okay, well, let's talk about Matrimony, Mayhem, and Murder.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. How has Fiona changed since that first book? Because now you're on book 10. And we've had conversations about this before, usually, especially with the cozy mysteries, you know, and a series, you kind of want your character to be the same throughout, but just nowadays you can't ignore that. They grow, especially their experiences. So how has Fiona changed between the first book and the 10th?
Fiona you know, she was, like I said, we're a very naive woman. And she, as time has gone on, she's done a lot of growing up, my Fiona has. And if in this book, you're going to see her assert herself. She's not going to be pushed around by Rita Landry. Not that Rita Landry is a nasty person. I didn't want that in my book. I didn't want there to be that nasty mother-in-law. But when you go to the airport and you pick up a woman you've never met, and she's absolutely beautiful, and she's so well dressed, you know, and well spoken and well traveled, you're going to be a little intimidated by it, you know. And then she's got on this fabulous diamond necklace, and you're like, where did she get that, you know? When Fiona gets herself in trouble with these 2 mysterious men, she's in the car with Fiona, and she wants Fiona to do this, and she wants Fiona to do that. And there's all these things going on. And finally, they manage to hide from these 2 men for a few minutes. Then she says, Fiona, you have to take me to the airport. And she's refusing to tell Fiona anything. And Fiona just says, nope, that's not happening. I'm not moving this car. You tell me what's going on. And you see her assert herself where you've never seen that before.
She wouldn't have done that in the first book.
No,
she did solve a murder in the first book, though.
Pardon me?
She did solve a murder in the first book, but
she solves a murder in every book. But you know, she never gets darn right, I'm not doing that, you know, but like she does in this book. And there's some other things in this book that she does that are totally not Fiona-like. And I think the readers will look back and go, well, good for you, Fiona Quinn. Because I know when I was writing it, I was like, well, good for you, Fiona Quinn. It's time you upped your back, you know.
But then she wasn't. You know, she's sweet and she's naive, especially in the first book. But she's not a pushover.
No, she's not.
She's never been a pushover. Yeah.
Right. She's not a welcome mat. It's just that she's a little bit more confident now. And there's been, like, in Waves of Murder, you saw that confidence starting to emerge when Nathan sent her home from the lake because he was worried she was going to get into the middle of a bad situation. And she got halfway home and she thought, no, I'm going back there because, you know, for the reason that I sent her back. You know, and you started to see her asserting herself a little more. And in Mambo and Murder, the outbursts that she and Brad have at the ballroom dancing competition. You know, and
when her brother shows up.
Right, you know, and she had no idea that he knew how to be a ballroom dancer. And they're trying to solve this murder from 40 years ago about 3 ballroom dancers. And, the whole thing blows up in both of their faces at the ballroom dancing competition. And I think it's she's starting to assert herself, where Chad's always been able to get the better of Fiona. And in this book, Fiona gets the better of Chad. So at the dinner table, Chad was always one to think of a really embarrassing story to tell about Fiona at the dinner table that just would, she would be so embarrassed by it. This time, Fiona turns the table on Chad. Mm-hmm. It's entertaining,
Yeah, that entertaining brother and sister situation. And as a matter of fact, and I'm trying not to give spoilers, there's a scene where Chad actually sees Fiona in Chad. I mean, where Nathan, she sees Fiona in Chad whenever Chad gets himself into trouble a little bit with the verbal diarrhea. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, just shut up.
Yeah, you're just, oh my God, you're just like Fiona. And Chad's very insulted by being told you're just like Fiona. Yeah. But he and Chad's very ornery. I love writing Chad because he's very, very ornery. And he's just excellent at getting under his sister's skin. So we don't have the perfect family situation. They're not perfect like the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
Was, and
but they're not dysfunctional either.
No, they're not dysfunctional. They're just, it's normal bickering. It's normal. But it becomes a little bit more than that in these books because let's face it, they're murder books. So, it goes a little bit beyond that in this, and you have to make it entertaining as well. But, in Home Alone, the original Home Alone book, the story has a saying in it, a piece of dialogue in it that I think is spot on. One of the most truest dialogues you'll ever hear in any movie. And that's when Kevin is sitting in the church on Christmas Eve with that old man. I can't remember what the old man's name is. And they're talking about family. And the old man says, how you feel about your family is a complicated thing. And for me, that is the most honest line ever spoken in a movie. It really is. Because everybody experiences it. Everybody experiences it. So that's what I try to bring across with Fiona and Chad. We also meet Nathan's sister in this book.
Yeah.
His older sister, Michelle. We also meet her.
Who's kind of supposed to be kind of like a female Chad.
Yeah. Yeah. Or well, actually, he's kind of, when his sister Michelle's around, he kind of becomes Chad.
Oh, okay.
So we meet.
Yeah, because there was one of the books where he said that he used to do the same things to his sister, that because he is younger than his sister.
Right, he's younger than his sister, and he said it's almost like a brother's birthright to do that to their sister, to embarrass their sister. He says it's like our birthright. It makes that sibling rivalry real. Because we've all been there, unless you're an only child. We've all been there, and I tried to make it enjoyable, but believable at the same time.
But not being cruel. They're not.
Right,
being
they're
cruel.
never cruel, and there's always a sense of forgiveness in the end. In the end, there's always a sense of, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I should have done that. But they do love each other. You'll see him, hug her and give her a kiss on the cheek, that sort of thing. So, there is love there. It's just that it's ornery love.
So now what are you planning for the 11th Fiona Quinn? What are your plans? Because you said you gave it sort of a facelift on this book.
I created new characters in this book.
Yeah.
Of course, Rita Landry is a new character. I haven't decided what I'm doing with Michelle yet.
Michelle is Nathan's
sister. Right.
Yeah.
And we met her, but I haven't decided what I'm doing with her yet, if I'm doing anything at all, and I don't feel need to make that decision right now. I don't have to make it. I did bring in some new characters besides Rita, and it's kind of going to give stories a little bit of a new flavor, and gives me some more fodder, go in different directions with the characters and the story.
Maybe Fiona will start teaching 4th grade.
Hey, you never know. You know, maybe
you never know.
You never know. She'll get that 4th grade position, you know. But yeah. So, and you know, we meet. I think there's 3 now. We meet. I borrowed a character from the Owl's Nest and brought it into this book.
Yes, they do cross over. As a matter of fact, you had Fiona in the first Owl's Nest as one of the customers.
As one of the customers in the couturier shop. She came in to have her wedding dress fitted. That's all she did. She didn't play an integral part in the storyline.
Yeah.
She was just there. So, my character, Alexa, has a boyfriend named Detective Cliff Slater. And Cliff Slater is kind of interesting because when they go back to the 1950s and 60s, they also bump into his grandfather, Clifton Slater, who was a big-time Pittsburgh detective. So she has met his grandfather, who is still alive. She's never met his grandfather in the 21st century. He's still alive. He's like 92 years old, and he's in a nursing home.
Yeah.
She hasn't met him. We'll get around to doing that.
Yeah.
But so he came into Matrimony, Mayhem, and Murder because when everything went down, you know, Nathan was too close to the people, the girl who had been murdered. I mean, she was his wedding planner, and she was dating his future brother-in-law. And so they had to bring in another detective. Well, Slater was just sitting around, not doing anything. So I grabbed hold of him and brought him over. You know,
just grab a hold of him and bring him in.
Just brought him right in and said, "Here you go, Cliff. We've got another little role for you to play here." And he was more than willing to do it. You know, we had a lot of fun with him. And of course, we have Tavia Andrews, who is Nathan's good friend in the police department, along with Wyatt Hayes. But we see that interaction between Tavia and Cliff Slater, seeing that, you know, Nathan isn't the only police detective in the department, that she helps with information and paperwork and whatnot. You know, we see her working with Cliff as well. So, you know, it was fun bringing him over. It was a lot of fun bringing him over. So.
And are you thinking of maybe having likewise have Nathan maybe go over to the Owl's Nest?
You never know.
You never know.
Never know. You might see Detective Nathan Landry in Bulldog Dare. So he may make an appearance there because let's face it, this book is published. That means he's sitting around doing nothing. We got to make some use of him. So he doesn't get lazy.
He should be enjoying his honeymoon. That's what he should be doing.
That's right. He should be on his honeymoon, and here I am. You never know. He may make an appearance. He may make a big appearance over there. So and sometimes it's fun to cross the characters over, because the one character, Celia Ramsey, she was a transplant from first 4 series.
Mm-hmm.
And
she was in the first book. She also made an appearance.
She was in the second. No, she was in the third book, To the Breaking Point. That's where she was.
That was the first four series. She was in the third four, but then she appeared in the first
Fiona's
Fiona
first
Quinn.
book, right?
But you
Because
introduced
she was a
her in the
ballerina.
first four.
Yeah.
Yeah, you introduced her in the first fourth book.
Right, because she was a professional ballerina. And then whenever I wrote Murder on Point, I needed a ballerina. And I thought, well, she's not doing anything. And I brought her over to Fiona. And she has made 2 appearances in the Fiona Quinn books. She was in Murder on Point, and then she was in book 5, Mambo and Murder, which was the ballroom dancing. She was in that book as well. So yeah, I like borrowing characters and being.
If you've already created them, and if they're a good fit for, and that's probably pretty unique in that, because Celia was in a romantic suspense, which was kind of edgy, very edgy.
Yes, and the one she was in was very edgy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you see her in a cozy mystery. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And she was a cozy character. She was a good character.
Yeah, she came right in, and so did her husband Grant. We saw him backstage at the ballet at the end of the book. He made an appearance with a dozen roses for her, but that's all I did with him. I didn't do anything more with him.
He didn't have any lines. Well, tell us what is the plot for Double Dog Dare, so that we know what to look for this coming May or June.
Well, this will be the 3rd book of the series, which
that's the Owl's Nest mystery.
The Owl's Nest, right? If you remember, I told you that I was going to write this new mystery series. And I said that I was only going to commit myself to 3 books in case I didn't like it or what have you. And so that's why he had 3 murders to solve. St. Pete said, you can get into the Guardian Angel squad, but you've got to solve these 3 mysteries. You've left these 3 deaths that you left behind unsolved. And then that way it gave me an out. If it was the trilogy, and that was it, So now here we are on book 3, and I've got a 4th book already in the works. So, but book 3 will take place in 1960. The murder will actually have taken place in 1964, and they will, 63, and they will arrive in 1964. It's
before
always
Sonny and Cher. Before Sonny and Cher.
The year before Sonny and Cher, exactly. And what it is that there are 2 authors who are New York Times best-selling authors, but they both are from the Pittsburgh area, and they make a bet. One is very reluctant to make the bet. The bet is to kill a book reviewer who just gives them perfectly awful reviews all the time. And she is, back in the 1960s, female book reviewers for big time papers weren't exactly, they just weren't plentiful. And she was at a Pittsburgh paper called the Pittsburgh Daily Times, which, by the way, has never existed. And she just rips into their book something terrible. And both of them are upset with her, but Charles Gerolf is far more upset with her than Seamus Blackwood is. And so he goats Seamus into this murder plot to get rid of this reviewer. And Seamus keeps saying, we're adults, we don't, we shouldn't do it. And he says, I double dog dare you.
And that's where the title comes from.
And that's where the title comes from, of course, from A Christmas Story. And because they grew up in that Christmas Story era, that's right around that time. And so he says, I double dog dare you. And so that is the premise of the storyline. Well, it's kind of hard for me to say, because actually the reviewer does not end up dead. Somebody else does. And it becomes which one of these authors killed this person, because the reviewer,
Maybe it was even somebody else.
right. So, but this reviewer, totally missed her. So that's the premise of it. And can Bobby get into the guardian angel squad after this third time around? And he's going to have to do it a bit without Alexa, because she goes back to 1963 with him to check out this situation. But while she's gone, back in the 21st century, something very bad happens, and to Cliff Slater. And
that's her boyfriend.
That's her boyfriend. And she comes back and refuses to leave the 21st century because of what's going on with Cliff. So Bobby finds himself in a situation where he has to figure this out on his own without her. And I'm going to actually have two things going on, one in 1963 and one in present day. So each chapter will be going back and forth. What's going on with Bobby? What's going on with her? So it should prove to be interesting. And when she goes back to the 21st century, there will be a character who follows her from 1963 quite accidentally. And he too will refuse to go back to 1963 because he feels he is needed to help with the situation. So this one's going to be a little bit more complicated.
Thank you so much for stopping by at Mystery Review Crew podcast. If you enjoyed our discussion with C.s Mcdonald, then do be sure to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to receive notifications of our upcoming podcasts. And we hope to see you next time. In the meantime, happy reading.